morning, Super Sparkly Sapphires. It's Friday, so I thought it would be fun to have a little tailgate party. Today is Friday, April 3rd, 2020. Find your mindful position in 5, 4, 3, 2, wonderful. Today is the 127th day of school.
100, 2 10s, and 7 1s.
100, 110, 120, 121, 122, 123, 124, 125, 126, 127. On Fridays, we're going to practice counting mixed coins. When you're counting mixed coins, you always want to start with the coin that's worth the most. Which one of these coins is worth the most? I hope you said quarter. So you're going to start with your quarter. Now which is worth the most after the quarter? Dime is next. Then we have our nickels and our pennies. So a quarter is worth 25 cents. So we say 25. Now, if you're adding a dime to that, what is a dime worth? I hope you said 10 cents. So adding 10 to 25, you can use the number wall if you need to. Our quarter's worth 25. A dime is 10 more, so that's 35. Now for our nickel, remember a nickel is worth nickel, nickel, nickel. A nickel is worth 5 cents. So after 35, we need to add 5 more, which makes 40. And if we have another nickel, we need to add 5 more. So after 35, 40, we will go to 45. And then our pennies are just worth 1, so it's the next number, 46, 47, 48. So let's do that all together now. 25, 35, 40, 45, 46, 47, 48. So that group of mixed coins is worth 48 cents.
Today we will use the number wall
To subtract or count back. So we're going to start with 10 minus 7. If I have 10 and I want to take away 7, I just count backwards 7 hops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The difference is 3. If I want to do 24 minus 6, where should I start? I hope you said 24. And then if I'm subtracting 6, should I count forward or backwards? I hope you said backwards. So I'm at 24 and I'm going to take away 6. 1, 2, 3. Ooh, where do I go from here? Let's see. I should go to 20. That's 4, 5, 6. 24 minus 6 is
18.
Do you remember when we counted by 9s and we went diagonally across the number wall? Well, today we're going to go diagonally toward the right, counting by 11s. And this is another really fun one because the 10s digit is always the same as the 1s digit. So when you count by 11s, you start with 11, 22, 33, 44, 55, 66, 77, 88, 99. We are on chapter 6. It's called A Fair Breeze. One morning, when the wind was from the west, Stuart put on his sailor suit and his sailor hat. He took his spyglass down from the shelf and set out for a walk full of the joy of life and the fear of dogs. With a rolling gait, he sauntered along toward Fifth Avenue, keeping a sharp lookout. Do you think he was looking out for dogs? So he's just moseying along, meandering happily. Whenever he spied a dog through his glass, Stuart would hurry to the nearest doorman, climb his trouser leg, and hide in the tails of his uniform. And once, when no doorman was handy, he had to crawl into yesterday's paper and roll himself up in the second section until danger was past. At the corner of Fifth Avenue, there were several people waiting for the uptown bus, and Stuart joined them. Nobody noticed him because he wasn't tall enough to be noticed. There's a picture of Stuart going up into the doorman's uniform to hide. I'm not tall enough to be noticed, thought Stuart. Yet I am tall enough to want to go to 72nd Street. When the bus came into view, all the men waved their canes and briefcases at the driver, and Stuart waved his spyglass. Then, knowing that the step of the bus would be too high for him, Stuart seized hold of the cuff of a gentleman's pants and was swung aboard without any trouble or inconvenience whatsoever. Remember, when he seized his hammer, that means to get something or to take it. So he seized hold of a man's pants so he could get onto the bus. Here he is on the cuff of the man's pants. Stuart never paid any fare on buses because he wasn't big enough to carry an ordinary dime. The only time he had ever attempted to carry a dime, he had rolled the coin along like a hoop while he raced along beside it. But it had got away from him on a hill and had been snatched up by an old woman with no teeth. After that experience, Stuart contented himself with the tiny coins which his father made for him out of tin foil. They were handsome little things, although rather hard to see without putting on your spectacles. When the conductor came around to collect the fare, Stuart fished in his purse and pulled out a coin no bigger than the eye of a grasshopper. "What's that you're offering me?" asked the conductor. "It's one of my dimes," said Stuart. "Is it now?" said the conductor. "Well, I'd have a fine time explaining that to the bus company. Why, you're no bigger than a dime yourself." "Yes, I am," replied Stuart angrily. "I'm more than twice as big as a dime. A dime only comes up to here on me." Stuart pointed to his hip. "Furthermore," he added, "I didn't come on this bus to be insulted." "I beg your pardon," said the conductor. "You'll have to forgive me, for I had no idea that in all the world there was such a small sailor." "Live and learn," muttered Stuart tartly, putting his change purse back in his pocket. When the bus stopped at 72nd Street, Stuart jumped out and hurried across to the sailboat pond in Central Park. Over the pond, the west wind blew, and into the teeth of the west wind sailed the sloops and schooners, their rails well down, their wet decks gleaming. Those are types of boats. The owners, boys and grown men, raced around the cement shores, hoping to arrive at the other side in time to keep the boats from bumping. So here's a little pond in the park where people are sailing their model ships in a pond. Some of the toy boats were not as small as you might think, for when you got close to them, you found that their main mast was taller than a man's head. And they were beautifully made, with everything shipshape and ready for sea. To Stuart, they seemed enormous, and he hoped he would be able to get aboard one of them and sail away to the far corners of the pond. He was an adventurous little fellow, and he loved the feel of the breeze in his face and the cry of the gulls overhead and the heave of the great swell under him. As he sat cross-legged on the wall that surrounds the pond, gazing out at the ships through his spyglass, Stuart noticed one boat that seemed to him finer and prouder than any other. Her name was Wasp. Here's the ship he saw, called the Wasp. The Wasp was a big black schooner flying the American flag. Now remember, the ships are models, they're toys, so they're only as tall as a person's head. But to Stuart, they seem enormous because, he's as big as 2 dimes. She was a big black schooner flying the American flag. She had a clipper bow, and on her foredeck was mounted a 3-inch cannon. "She's the ship for me," thought Stuart. And the next time she sailed in, he ran over to where she was being turned around. "Excuse me, sir," said Stuart to the man who was turning her, "but are you the owner of the schooner Wasp?" "I am," replied the man, surprised to be addressed by a mouse in a sailor suit. "I'm looking for a berth in a good ship," continued Stuart, "and I thought that perhaps you might sign me on. I'm strong and I'm quick." "Are you sober?" asked the owner of the Wasp. "I do my work," said Stuart crisply. The man looked sharply at him. He couldn't help admiring the trim appearance and bold manner of this diminutive seafaring character. Diminutive means really small. "Well," he said at length, pointing to the prow of the Wasp out toward the center of the pond, "I'll tell you what I'll do with you. You see that big racing sloop out there?" "I do," said Stuart. "That's the Lillian B. Womrath," said the man, "and I hate her with all my heart." "Ooh." "Then so do I," cried Stuart loyally. "I hate her because she is always bumping into my boat," continued the man, "and because her owner is a lazy boy who doesn't understand sailing and who hardly knows a squall from a squid." "Or a jib from a jibe," called Stuart. "Or a luff from a leech," bellowed the man. "Or a deck from a dock," screamed Stuart. "Or a mast from a mist," yelled the man. "But hold on now, no more of this. I'll tell you what we'll do. The Lillian B. Womrath has always been able to beat the Wasp sailing, but I believe that if my schooner were properly handled, it would be a different story. Nobody knows how I suffer standing here on shore, helpless, watching the Wasp blunder along, when all she needs is a steady hand on her helm. So, my young friend, I'll let you sail the Wasp across the pond and back, and if you can beat that detestable sloop, I'll give you a regular job." So Stuart has a chance to sail and beat the Lillian B. Womrath, and if he can do that, he will prove to the owner of Wasp that he is good enough to permanently sail the Wasp. "Aye, aye, sir," said Stuart, swinging himself aboard the schooner and taking his place at the wheel. "Ready about." Here's Stuart standing at the edge of the pond with the man, and here he is getting on the Wasp. "Aye, aye, sir," said Stuart, swinging himself aboard the schooner and taking his place at the wheel. "Ready about." "One moment," said the man. "Do you mind telling me how you propose to beat the other boat?" "I intend to crack on more sail," said Stuart. "Not in my boat, thank you," replied the man quickly. "I don't want you capsizing in a squall." Do you know what capsizing is? Capsizing is when the boat tips over. "Well then," said Stuart, "I'll catch the sloop broad on and rake her with fire from my forward gun." "Foul means," said the man. "No, no, I want this to be a boat race, not a naval battle." "Well then," said Stuart cheerfully, "I'll sail the Wasp straight and true and let the Lillian B. Womrath go yawing all over the pond." "Bravo," cried the man, "and good luck with you." And so saying, he let go of the Wasp's prow. A puff of air bellied out the schooner's headsails, and she paid off, filled away on the port tack, heeling gracefully over to the breeze while Stuart twirled her wheel and braced himself against a deck cleat. "By the by," yelled the man, "you haven't told me your name." "Name is Stuart Little," called Stuart at the top of his lungs. "I'm the second son of Frederick C. Little of this city." "Bon voyage, Stuart," hollered his friend. "Take care of yourself and bring the Wasp home safe." "That I will," shouted Stuart. And he was so proud and happy he let go of the wheel for a second and did a little dance on the sloping deck, never noticing how narrowly he escaped hitting a tramp steamer that was drifting in his path, with her engines disabled and her decks awash. I bet Stuart is in for a big adventure on that pond. What do you think? Your job today for Fiction Friday is to do this page. You're going to trace the vocabulary word diminutive, which remember means really small, although it's a really long word. You're going to draw Stuart, his actual size, which is the height of 2 dimes. And then you're going to draw a picture of the schooner, the Wasp. That's the ship that he's sailing on the pond.